Mask of a Diva, a Stan Kraychik mystery, Book 4, 1994. Author, Grant Michaels. Publisher, St. Martin's Press, New York. Author, Eric Aust. For all the divas, operatic and otherwise. Chapter 32. Before returning to the estate, I stopped by Lieutenant Branco's temporary office in the Performance Center residence building. The opera festival had set up a suite of rooms for him and his staff to conduct their investigation. The doorman of the building called Branco, who let me in right away. I expected the office to be abuzz with activity, but instead I found Branco packing up the place to return back to Boston. "No reason to stick around now," he said. "I made my arrest, and within an hour I was thwarted." I knew he was referring to Daphne. "She had to do it," I said. "The success of the festival depends on Jonathan Byers." "One thing's for sure," he said. "The Davenport woman's money sure talks loud in this town." "She is the local industry, Lieutenant. And he was my prime suspect." "But didn't you say you weren't really convinced about him yourself?" "That was a personal and confidential aside to you, Stan. It's definitely not my official stand. I don't go around trying to look like a fool." "I know that," I said. "You acted on the evidence you had." "There wasn't much else I could do." "No," I said, "I guess there wasn't. Though maybe I did kind of jump the gun." "Maybe. But I can't very well continue my investigation here if I've already booked a suspect." "Why not?" "They do it on television all the time." "This isn't television, Stan. It would look bad." "Well," I said. "What?" "You could continue investigating unofficially," Branco said. "I probably will." "Have you considered using intuition to help your logic?" Branco grunted. "I can't afford to waste time on that." "But at this point, you almost have no choice. Logic is what got you a prime suspect you don't wholeheartedly believe in. Maybe using another part of your mind would." "Cut it right now, okay? That kind of yak is for amateurs. I'm a professional. I have years of training and experience. That is a job I do, a real job. Do you know what that is? I'm not about to start looking into crystal balls to find out who's been killing these people." Branco was clearly upset about the turn of events. I couldn't blame him. Based on the evidence he had, he'd arrested his suspect. How was he to know that a wealthy dowager would bail the guy out within an hour? If he continued with his investigation now, officially at least, then he would look like a fool. I waited a few moments for the air to cool down, and during those moments I searched Branco's face for a sign that Daphne's hidden love theory about him was true. But all I could perceive coming from the man was anger. "Lieutenant, I'm not suggesting a crystal ball. I don't believe in that stuff either, but I do know from my limited experience that sometimes we can't see the answer to a difficult problem because we keep looking at it from the same angle." "I know that," he said irritably. "I use that technique looking at a situation from the points of view of all the suspects, trying to see their motives." "But that's still using logic." "I'm talking about something else," I said. "I'm suggesting that you take all the facts you've gathered so far, and instead of organizing them into categories and lists, instead of trying to inflict a neat and tidy formula on what you have, I'm saying you might throw everything together, like in a big stock pot, and then turn up the heat to a rapid boil to see what happens." "I'll tell you what'll happen," he said. "A mess will happen, that's what." He threw the last of the dossiers into a metal attaché case. "Just try it, Lieutenant. You don't have to tell anybody about it. Do it like an experiment in the kitchen. Something might combine or congeal in a way you hadn't expected." "You know what?" he said. "You're nuts." He snapped the latches on the attaché case. Then he packed up the portable computer and printer that was on his desk. I thought I saw a tiny shudder when he disconnected a tiny gray wire that had run from the computer to a phone jack in the wall. Apparently, Branco had been online with Boston headquarters, and for all I knew, the rest of the fact-led and computerized world, logic. Logic everywhere, but without his electronic lifeline, Branco was just another flesh-and-blood man, typically refusing to recognize the potential power of intuition. I said, "Does this mean the case is closed?" Branco wavered before saying, It's not closed until we get a conviction. What about my badge if I didn't help you arrest Byers? Don't worry, said Branco. You did good work. Then I reminded him that I'd left a complimentary ticket at the box office for the full dress rehearsal the following night. Nicole will be coming too, I said. Branco smiled. Is that so? I'll give her a call when I get back to town. Maybe we can ride out here together tomorrow. She'd like that. Who wouldn't? Branco headed toward the door, and I followed him out the building to his car. He got in his old Alfa and started it. The engine purred like a big tiger. He spoke through the open window. You're staying around, right? I still have work to do in spite of what you think, Lieutenant. Creating beauty is a real job, too. It's just different from yours. I make people beautiful. You put them in jail. Right, said Branco with a grunt. He revved the engine. I said, maybe by the time you come back tomorrow, you'll have had a revelation about the killer. Sure, I will. He put the car in reverse. As it rolled backwards away from me, I said, You never showed me how to power shift. There's time, he replied. Then he put the car in first gear and drove off. At Daphne's house, Parker greeted me at the door. For some odd reason, he informed me that the maestro was tired and was taking a light supper in his room. Wasn't really my concern. I suppose the old man was exhausted by spending the day with, at least in his eyes, a convicted killer. Perhaps Maestro Toscanelli didn't understand the concept of innocent until proven guilty. Then again, it was only a concept hardly ever implemented in real life. Parker continued saying that Daphne was in the library, and if I wanted to join her, I was welcome. I said I would. I went in and found her sitting in front of the fireplace. Daphne turned in her chair to greet me, but she didn't stand. Ah, you're back, she said with a chill that even the cheery fire couldn't dispel. Yes, I said. Then she told me matter-of-factly that Maurizio had been released from the hospital and was staying with Parker's daughter. I told her I already knew that. When'd you find out? She said. Last night. Why didn't you tell me then? For an older girl, Daphne could sure make a room bristle with tension. I guess we got to talking about Branco, and I forgot. Daphne grimaced. Yes. That man, he almost destroyed my festival. I'm sorry to admit it, but I was mistaken about him. His presence is so powerful you forget yourself, but now I'm inclined to agree with the maestro's assessment. When faced with a stressful situation, the lieutenant becomes a brute. He needs absolute power and control. Daphne, I don't think Lieutenant Branco arrested Jonathan Byers just to ruin the festival. Daphne said, Are you defending his actions now? I'm trying to be reasonable. Well then, don't be. This is not a reasonable situation. Reason is what the lieutenant used to arrest Sir Jonathan. I had to agree with her there. Branco's blunder was almost irresponsible, a desperate move to do something, anything, to maintain his copness. Daphne, if it's any consolation, even Lieutenant Branco realizes that arresting Jonathan Byers may have been a mistake, but he was frustrated and had to do something. You can understand that at least. I expect an officer of the law to behave professionally according to the law, not on some whimsical need to be right. But he was acting according to the law, I said. Yet Daphne was right too. I said, I'm sure everything will be fine. The run-through this afternoon was inspired. Even Sir Jonathan was pleased. Daphne made a quiet little mewing sound that I hoped marked the end of our disagreement, but then said, I'm afraid that bodes only trouble then. Surely you know the stage lore that says a good dress rehearsal augurs a bad opening night. But today wasn't the dress rehearsal, Daphne. That's tomorrow night. Oh, she said. Then I suppose there's still hope. Yes, I said agreeably, thinking how strange it was to be hoping for a bad rehearsal the following night. I hadn't realized that Daphne was superstitious. Would you like me to stay here or in the cottage tonight? I said. As you please, my dear. Not the warmest welcome, I guess, for consorting with Branco. I was now perceived as the enemy. I expected soon the maestro would be declaiming El Pafaro un fascista, although I suppose some hairstylists are like fascists in their quest for absolute control of the situation. So what was left for me to do? Go to the cottage and sulk, or continue with the case on my own? I had no vested interest in doing right the way Branco did. I had no face to lose. So what if I came off the fool? Finding the killer was more important, and if I could do that, if I could get Branco back on track to the real corporate culprit, then maybe I'd earn my merit badge after all. I told Daphne that I wanted to go back to town and that I might be returning very late, so it was probably better if I stayed in the cottage that night. Are you sure that's why? She said. You mean about going out? Yes. I'm not going prowling or anything like that. I wasn't suggesting that, my dear, she softened finally, when it came to my safety. But if you believe as I do, and the lieutenant too, apparently, that the real killer is still at large, then there's certainly reason for extreme caution. I'll be careful. I want you to do more, she said. Whatever you decide to stay tonight, here or the cottage or elsewhere, I want you to call Parker and tell him. I'll be okay, Daphne. You must promise me, or I'll have the car keys back right now. I don't like ultimatums, my dear, but you leave me no choice. No wonder Branco's need for power had provoked Daphne. It took one to know one. Yes, ma'am, I said. I promise I'll either call Parker or else come to the front door myself. Good. Now you take care. Before I set off for town, I returned to the cottage to call Nicole in Boston. I told her to expect a call from Lieutenant Branco and that the chances were very likely that she'd be riding out with him to beautiful Abigail by the sea. I'd like to be writing something else, she said, but it's not in the cards for the lieutenant and me. I pretended to ignore her remark. I'd heard enough speculation about Branco's sexual vagaries from Daphne, and I preferred it to stay that way. Vague. How's Sugar Baby? I said. She sits at the window and gazes northward over the harbor like a lonely whaler's wife. Poor thing, I said. Incarcerated in a duplex penthouse at Harbor Towers. Not even a decent widow's walk. She'll survive, said Nicole. Is she eating okay? Better than me, replied Nicole. It'll be good to see you tomorrow late night, Nicky. I wonder how I should dress, she said, like a temptress or a lady of refinement. It's the opera, doll. Anything goes. We said goodbye, or rather I said goodbye, and Nicole hung up as usual. Then I headed into town for my supper. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.